For over 100 years, the way America has dealt with drugs has been like a giant pendulum swinging back and forth. We've gone from almost zero regulation to an era of total criminalization, and now we're in this really complex mix of treatment and punishment. So let's dive into this pretty dramatic history.
I know, sounds completely crazy today, right? But this one question really gets to the heart of the matter. It shows how radically our whole view of these substances can shift over time. What was once seen as a miracle cure can and did become public enemy number one.
And here is the actual proof. Cocaine toothache drops. Instantaneous cure. This wasn't some shady back alley product either. This was sold right over the counter, marketed to respectable families. And get this, before 1906, these patent medicines didn't even have to list their ingredients. So you might not have had any idea you were taking cocaine or opium, which were in everything from tonics to cough syrup.
So let's rewind to that first era. Before the federal government really got involved, addiction just wasn't seen as a crime, not at all. People saw it as a personal tragedy, maybe a private vice, but most of the time it was treated as a medical problem that you worked out between you and your doctor.
Okay, now this is where it gets really fascinating. If you look at who the typical addict was back then, it's not who you'd think. Surveys from the late 1800s showed that about 2/3 of people hooked on medicinal opiates were middle and upper-class women. They'd been prescribed these drugs for illnesses and were seen as unfortunate patients who needed help. This was a completely different world from the contempt society had for the so-called hardcore users, like Chinese laborers in opium dens. And this is so crucial. Drug policy is so often shaped not by the drug itself, but by who we think the user is.
But as you can probably guess, that more tolerant view didn't last. In the early 20th century, that big pendulum began its massive swing in the complete opposite direction. It was a shift that would transform the addict from a patient needing care into a criminal who deserved to be punished.
So how on earth did that happen so fast? Well, it wasn't just one thing, it was a rapid domino effect. It all started in 1906 with the Pure Food and Drug Act, which forced companies to finally list narcotics on their labels, and that scared a lot of people. Then came the Harrison Act in 1914. Now, this didn't technically outlaw drugs, but it taxed and regulated them so heavily it became the foundation for federal enforcement. And the real final nail in the coffin? A series of court decisions that basically made it illegal for doctors to help maintain an addict's habit, slamming the door shut on the medical approach.
And this quote just perfectly captures the human cost of that shift. Once the doctors were out of the picture, users were shoved into a brand new, dangerous black market. This quote lays out the vicious cycle. A small-time arrest leads to prison. Prison leads to getting involved with criminal gangs, and that often leads to a deeper spiral into addiction, just to survive. The policy didn't just punish users, it actually created a criminal subculture from scratch.
This whole shift set the stage for a brand new era, one that went on for more than 40 years. And it was dominated by one single, incredibly powerful figure who would cement this enforcement-first approach in the American mindset.
So meet Harry J. Anslinger. This guy ran the Federal Bureau of Narcotics from 1930 all the way to 1962. And this description of him really says it all, doesn't it? He was this intimidating, tough-as-nails cop who saw drug use not as a health issue, but as a moral failing that had to be stamped out with the full power of the law. He was also a political genius and used that power to shape drug policy for an entire generation.
I mean, you can hear his philosophy loud and clear in his own words. To Anslinger, the idea of a doctor giving maintenance doses to an addict was just absurd, immoral. He's comparing it to setting up bars for alcoholics. It's no surprise he fought tooth and nail against any kind of medical maintenance, making sure the only official response to addiction was punishment.
But after Anslinger's long reign, the pendulum did start to swing back again. Only this time it sort of got stuck in the middle. Starting in the 1960s, America developed a kind of split personality on drug policy. We ended up with this bizarre paradox of treatment and punishment that, honestly, we're still living with today. Just look at the contrast here. It's wild. On one hand, you have the medical model making a comeback. Methadone clinics start opening up, offering a type of maintenance that Anslinger would have absolutely despised. We started talking about addiction as a disease again. But at the exact same time, the punishment model was being cranked up to 11. President Reagan declared the war on drugs, and these tough-on-crime policies led to a massive explosion in arrests and prison populations. The country was literally trying to go in two opposite directions at once.
And right in the middle of this policy tug-of-war, a whole new crisis explodes. And
In the early 80s, a huge surplus of cocaine powder floods the market and prices just crash by as much as 80%. To make any profit, dealers started converting that powder into a cheap, powerful, and smokable form, crack. And that one innovation just fueled an epidemic in America's inner cities.
This quote from Dr. Marie Neiswander, one of the people who pioneered methadone treatment, offers such a powerful counterargument to everything Anslinger stood for. She basically argued that all the crime, the misery, the suffering, it wasn't caused by the drugs themselves. It was caused by the punitive laws that made them illegal, expensive, and dangerous. In her view, we created this tragedy ourselves. So, after a century of policy whiplash, where does that leave us? Well, we've inherited this incredibly complex maze of contradictory ideas. We have innovative solutions popping up right next to the devastating consequences of all those past decisions. One of the modern attempts to fix this is the drug court. You could call it the ultimate hybrid of medicine and criminal justice. So instead of just locking up nonviolent offenders, the system tries to divert them into this very structured program that combines treatment, close supervision, and regular drug testing. It's a real attempt to blend justice and therapy, admitting that, hey, maybe punishment alone doesn't actually work.
But while systems like drug courts are trying to manage the user, the punishment model has these other consequences, like forcing drug production to go underground into these incredibly dangerous environments. This picture, this isn't from some industrial chemical spill. This is the reality of cleaning up a secret meth lab, a full-blown hazardous material situation right inside a suburban home.
And the cleanup, as you can see here, is just a massive, massive undertaking. It's the super meticulous scientific process based on EPA guidelines. We're talking removing drywall, carpets, everything, followed by detailed chemical testing. It's just a stark reminder of the hidden health and environmental costs that come from pushing all of this into the shadows.
And now, that pendulum is still swinging. Just look at MDMA. It was first created over 100 years ago, became famous as the party drug ecstasy, and was made illegal. But today, it's being seriously studied in clinical trials as a potentially revolutionary breakthrough therapy for PTSD. A substance that was once a poster child for the war on drugs is now being re-examined as a powerful medicine.
So all of this leaves us with one final and really crucial question. From cocaine toothache drops all the way to today's fentanyl crisis, America's approach to drugs has been the story of constant and often totally contradictory change. As we debate new policies, are we finally getting on the right track, or is that pendulum just swinging toward a whole new set of problems we can't even foresee yet?